listed company in Orange County that provides transportation services for folks like Caltrans. 3 years ago, last week, we started a startup in a public company, which has been a very interesting challenge for us. So to start with, a question is, how many people eat food? Good. All right, we'll get along just fine. So ClearAg is an ag tech company that helps us grow food more efficiently on a global basis. So let me tell you a story. I have a 15-year-old daughter. She graduates from high school in 2020. When she's 48 years old, the world will be a very different place. By that time, the population will have doubled, and as such, our crop yield on a global basis will have to. So not only will we have to double our food supply on a global basis, we'll have to do it more efficiently. There'll be less land. We lose arable land every year. There's less water. And the manpower, the people that help us plant and harvest and distribute this food, it decreases every year. In 1870, 50% of the US population was affiliated with agriculture. Last year it was 2%, and that number is not getting better. So it's a very inefficient method that we need to improve upon over time to feed the global population. But we've done this before. In fact, we've done this 3 times before. So it started with the mechanization of agriculture, something as simple as a plow in the 18th century. And today we have GPS-guided tractor systems, precision planting that can plant within a 2-centimeter space. I can fertilize that specific space, I can water that space, and that had the effect of doubling the yield the amount of crops that we can grow on a particular piece of land over time. The chemical revolution has also effectively doubled the yields. These are synthetic chemicals such as pesticides, herbicides, insecticides. It's also the nutrients that we put on, the NPK that help us grow crops on less than efficient land. And that's had an effect on doubling the yield. The genetics. So genetics, we all know about GMO, and these are genetically modifying the crop. So it can promote root growth, it can promote drought resistance, and effectively it can reduce the pest and disease impact and effectively double the yield. The problem is that with genetics, it's 88% of our corn crop in the US right now is GMO. 93% of our soy crop right now is GMO. So there's not a lot of return on that investment that we'll get out of that anymore. It's actually very effective. You do have things such as biologicals and genetic by environment, so it's subparticle interaction with traits within the seed itself. And those will all have development, but that's basically tapped out. So the 4th revolution is really the information revolution, and that's what ClearAg does. It provides the water information, the weather information, and the soil information that allow us to grow more crops more effectively with less inputs on a global basis. So ClearAg, at its basis, we're a weather company, we're an operating weather company. We started with snowplows, so we can prescribe the treatment on specific road surface, right? So if there's a waterway next to it, we wouldn't put salt down, we might put a sugar beet brine down. So it's a prescriptive service on top of a road. If you move that 100 yards to the left, it's on an agricultural land. So what we actually do is we monitor the mass and energy transfer between the environment and the soil layer, things like rain. We also add the crop, so we know the crop stage growth. So as a crop grows, the roots go into the ground more, and the water flow through that soil brings nutrients within range or out of range. So we can model this biological system, and that's actually what we're doing. It's the weather, the water, the soil, and the crop growth information that allows you to emulate this biological environment, and that allows you to make better decisions. Okay? So ClearAg is an AI-based system. It's an AI-based system that allows you to converge on these different things. So as I have different inputs, for instance, we'll go to this. So different inputs, the seeds, the chemicals, the water, the human activity that goes into it, all of those have efficiencies that can be gained from them. So what we're doing here is using artificial intelligence to bring in all available information. Information could be from the tractor itself, where it was planted, when it was planted, what cultivar was planted. It could be from the farmer themselves, so the tacit information, the experience that they've gained working that land over time. That's invaluable information. It needs to be put in context to the telemetry information from the tractor, or the weather information that we're grabbing from satellites, or from drones, or from physical sensors. All of this needs to converge into an appropriate set of information that you can make the 40 decisions per year that you make on a piece of land. Right? So it's everything from planting through harvesting and everything that goes in between there. So we can save up to 40% of water through irrigation. So there's about 400,000 pivot systems in the US, and those are those things when you fly over, you see the pivot that goes around and spreads the water. Well, the essential aspect of that is how much water do you put down? And to do that, you need to understand the soil physics. So the vertical and horizontal movement of water through that soil, and that depends on the type of soil. So if it's clay, it operates differently than sand. The percent of organic matter, so how will it process the nutrients in the soil? How will that decay, release nitrogen, and will it get to that crop system? So with irrigation, because we understand the soil physics, the interaction between the atmosphere and the soil and the crop interaction, we can determine when and where to put down how much water. On these pivot systems, I should be able to control specific nozzles on that pivot, because the top of the hill will be drier than the bottom of the hill, and they respond differently. So it's through this information that you can become much more precise. The other thing is you put a lot of crop protection chemicals through these irrigation systems. It's called chemigation and fertigation. So it's the ability to provide nutrients or crop protection, insecticides, pesticides, and herbicides through that water stream. And the more we can do that, the less that will go on our food. So it's really important for the sustainability, the traceability of these crops. Instead of the wall-to-wall spraying that takes place right now, just blind spraying of these chemicals across the crops, if you can give them a precise area, a sub-work zone within that field. So think of it as a field with sub-polygons within there that I can associate different information values with that polygon that allows me to respond to that more intelligently and accurately. Same with nutrients. So nutrients are primarily nitrogen, and nitrogen, it depends on the vertical and horizontal movement of water through that soil. So if I have a corn crop that's in the third month of growth, I know approximately where those roots are, so I can start to model and determine if that crop is getting enough nutrients to grow sufficiently. And we do this all through math. We don't do this with any physical sensors, so it's all AI-based analytics. So it's quite amazing, but we can tell, for instance, soil temperature and moisture down to sub 2 meters under the ground, anywhere on the planet, with no physical sensors. So it's all modeled, it's a modeling system. So ClearAg can really help us feed the world. This is an international system. We produce the software in every language. We operate on a 1 kilometer grid basis, so you can look any place on the planet. If I'm a researcher at a chemical company and I'm running test plots in 11 different countries, I can have consistent environmental monitoring of my environmental conditions anywhere on the planet. It's the concept of you don't wear 2 watches, right? So you have consistent modeling of that. So the information value that ClearAg provides allows more efficient use of these inputs. It creates a higher yield for the growers. So on less land, we can produce more crops with less inputs and less cost. But more importantly, it allows us to feed the world.